It's interesting, actually. I was in the back of the room throughout the whole of that, whole of the morning. And I don't know if being on last is good or bad, but what it does allow you to do is rejig, reposition, and have a think about your deck in the context of everything else that you've seen. I'm going to be pulling together elements of the presentations from this morning, which I thought were really good. I've learnt so much just sitting in the back and taking it in and writing something on my notes. I was really struck by how Belinda showed us that mobile was with us at every stage of our lives, and really the unparalleled value of mobile as a data source because of that. So I'm going to be talking about the ubiquity of mobile in that sense. Dave spoke about it's kind of due to the exponential growth of computing power that we've seen in kind of the 50s and 60s is going to transform our society in ways that actually right now we can't even imagine. He talked about machine learning as one of the key ways that will happen. I'm going to be talking about similar transformational technologies in brain control interfaces and also pervasive computing. And Illy was great, 'cause he actually helped me with finishing off my end, actually, because he sort of said a couple of things that went, hang on, that's absolutely perfect. And I was looking for the ending, so thank you, Illy. I think he's gone. But thank you, Illy, wherever you are. He described perfectly how technology is becoming more human. You know, his dad, who can't write English, is able to interact with the device in a way that's very human. And actually, he talked really sweetly about how the relationship with his dad has changed as a result. He's able to have conversations with his dad they weren't able to do before. And that's the power of something that, something as kind of physical as that can build genuine emotional resonance. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well in the end. But first, let's keep an eye on time, because I do babble on a bit. Someone give me a 5-minute whirly thing with your fingers when I'm coming up to kind of a couple of minutes. Sophie, I'll look at you. So imagine it's the late 1990s and you're on the campus of MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. You might run into these guys. These guys, they call themselves the Borgs, or short for cyborgs. Has anyone seen this picture before? A couple of people, great. Kind of look like a low, I sort of look at that and I would describe them as a low-rent Ghostbusters. But all their devices, all the paraphernalia on them is homemade. You can see there they've got special goggles with built-in cameras and display screens attached to computers that they're carrying around in their messenger bags or rucksacks. These are portable computers at the time, which, if some of you remember, were big, bulky and very heavy, nothing like a MacBook Air in those days. As well as, interestingly, when they look in their hands, they've got one-handed keypads, and that allowed them to enter data with just one hand in very intuitive ways. So using this tech, they could do things like type notes as they chatted over the water cooler with their fellow researchers in the hall. Kind of weird, though. I mean, I'm sure the people they were talking to were kind of going, what the hell are you doing? But they could pull up maps to tell them where they wanted to go in town, wherever they were. And anything everything they imagined about the future was where the power of computing intelligence was with them all the time, wherever they were. And it's a term called pervasive computing. We're going to talk about that a little bit more as we go on. And let's say after checking out the Borg, not the Star Trek reference Borgs, but I'm sure actually the writers of Star Trek probably knew about these guys before they started writing. After checking out the Borgs, you've decided you're slightly hungry and you want to go to the cafeteria, but you've got no idea about where the cafeteria is on the MIT campus. You've never been before, and you're kind of weirded out by seeing these guys. Imagine that you hold out your hands, and a projector somewhere above you projects light onto your hands, and it asks you where you want to go. Through a few hand gestures, finger movements, you make your selection, take me to the cafeteria, and the arrows on your hand, which you'll see shortly, show you the direction of travel. The light moves with your hand, call this smart light, and interacts with the context of your particular behaviour at the time. What you're looking at is technology right in the last couple of years. It's at the cutting edge of digital interaction today. It's a system called Armura, being developed by Carnegie Mellon University. Imagine if remotely accessing the power of the network no longer required a device, but could be accessed intuitively anywhere that you were in the world, where actually the device is your own body. Imagine the opportunities for brands to deliver messages in this world, the huge opportunities for contextual messaging, but also, to be honest, the massive dangers, the huge pitfalls for brands that misplaced or mistimed those messages. We're going to get into that towards the end here. This understanding, for me, of mobile as an all-pervasive occasion with a central role in the future of digital experience is some of the things we're going to talk about today. I think the speakers today have done a brilliant job, actually for me, of showing me now and a little bit of the future of mobile. I'm going to kind of stretch it even slightly further and look at the future, let's say the next kind of 20, 30, 40 years. But actually, the point is, a lot of the technology we're going to see today is happening in the future. Is happening today. What we can see is that the technology we're seeing being developed, such as Amura, and I'll go on to some others, can begin to show mobile's future, but also right now in mobile's present. My name's Arif Haq. I work at Contagious, only for a couple of months now. I've been there two months. 4 months ago, though, I was in the brand marketing team at PepsiCo UK. I spent 10 years as a client on the beverage side of the business, and it ended with a marketing innovation role on a brand called Gatorade. It's a big sports nutrition brand now globally. And my task there was to accelerate the in-house understanding of innovation and technology and digital innovation. You can see over 10 years I kind of was there as we sort of understood the power of digital and mobile and how it could help augment the rest of our marketing mix. Anyway, to talk to that, 10 years ago I was an assistant brand manager at PepsiCo office in Richmond, and I was faced with something like this. This is my line-by-line schedule of my A&M budget. In order of strategic importance, in order of, as you'll see, money, just in terms of scale, those were the things I thought about more at the top. These are the things I thought about less at the bottom. Now, over time, what I saw was digital was reflected as that. Digital and mobile, both together. And let's be honest, sometimes mobile's not even on there. It's just lumped into digital. This shows you a very tactical view at that time of where digital was in the conversation. Now, over time, I saw how digital and mobile actually were moving from the lines at the bottom to help support discussions around lines towards the top. They were increasingly becoming items that I was talking to TV agencies about, or the outdoor creative team. We were getting into areas where we said, what's the power of mobile and digital to augment the other channels? And uniquely, digital and mobile are able to augment the others in ways that the others can't do back to digital and mobile. In this way, digital and mobile kind of served as the glue that bound our campaigns together. And the evolution of this is just continued now. And you'll find clients now, hopefully, none of your clients will now think of digital and mobile as purely line items that are tactical in their A&M budgets. You know, getting some people to recognise that can be tough, certainly internally. I found just renaming digital and mobile to technology and literally calling that two lines, change those two lines in your A&M to just one line that says technology, allowed me to have a conversation with my finance director, which was much more persuasive and compelling. As marketers, it's our job to convince procurement and finance of the power and value of marketing, and particularly some of the new innovative ways of marketing. Finance directors and procurement people, and I've worked with some amazing, brilliant ones that have really helped me develop as a marketeer, are only just getting their heads around the value of TV advertising to deliver growth to shareholders. actually, when you start talking about Twitter, social media, and Facebook, eyes glaze over. It's our job to convince them of the benefit of digital technology. Now, we've kind of digressed slightly there, but speaking of labels, let's talk about the label we're here to talk about today. Mobile. Now, back in 1985, mobile meant mobile phone, particularly device-related. There's an early phone, I think the Nokia 8500, the brick, as it was fondly known as. This evolved in time to include something called a smartphone. Now, the smartphone relied on a convergence of the technology of mobile phones and PDAs. Belinda mentioned PDAs today. Those of you who've never seen one, and I can see around the ages in the room, most of you probably will have never seen one of these. That's the Apple Newton. Palm Pilot was another big player in the PDA market, the personal digital assistant. Essentially held your diary, your emails, your organizer. Those two were combined into one device, and there's one of the earliest smartphones, the Nokia 9900. But it was also linked up with another idea, the idea of connectivity. And there's Sir Tim Berners-Lee, God, as we call him. Maybe he really is the Jesus figure. I think the coolest bit of the Olympic ceremony, and there are lots of cool bits, was when he was on the desk and we sort of nodded our heads towards that. The really interesting thing about a lot of my American friends kind of assumed Al Gore created the internet, but they were kind of like, well, who's this guy? And you had to explain what Tim's role in it. The important thing to note here, though, is that mobile is still primarily a device-led description. But hang on, today. So, this is the Samsung Galaxy Note 8. It's a phone, but it's also a tablet. And some wonks have deemed to christen this a new category called the phablet, the mix of the smartphone and the tablet. I think it's slightly ridiculous, but you kind of get the idea of the continuation of this convergence. People don't want a tablet and a phone, and for those people, they can look like that. Has anyone actually got one of these? They are brilliant. Do you use it as a phone? No, you don't. So it's just like use it as a mini tablet. Great. Now, I've seen people use this as a phone, and it does look ridiculous, but you can also see the power of that when they're able to do meetings without carrying lots of devices around them. Power consumption, you don't have to then worry about your mobile recharging and your laptop and your tablet. Is it a large phone? Is it a small tablet? I don't actually think it matters. But what this talks to is whether it's a large phone, a small tablet, a netbook, a Featherlight laptop. All of these are being used to access the internet out of the home and make calls on right now. This device usage is going to continue to blur further. Now, I think the reality today, therefore, is that although many people still use the term mobile to describe a device, actually what it's describing is an occasion, a device-agnostic occasion, that we can probably describe with a very old-school term called on the go. What's on the go? This guy's on the go. He's definitely illegally on the go by the looks of it. She's on the go. This guy's definitely on the go. The interesting thing, though, is so is this lady. She's on the go in her own home. The on-the-go occasion is starting to get very elastic. And we all, I think, are aware now, and we talked about it earlier, the increased use of smartphones on your sofa. And I do this all the time, and I didn't do this 3 or 4 years ago. And that's because some of the apps now that you can get to order, look at holidays and buy the holiday tickets on your phone, order a pizza, plan your Saturday night out. The apps, the fluid way that you can do these things on your mobile now, it wasn't possible 3 or 4 years ago. It basically taps in to our inherent laziness. Right? So I'm on the sofa, my laptop, my beautifully rich kind of internet experience is like not more than maybe 3 or 4 feet away from me. But I can't be bothered to move. I've got my phone with me. I'm happy dealing with that. And the experience on that is actually really good now. And it just wasn't about 5, 6 years ago. So the idea of having an on-the-go occasion in your home, I think, is going to grow and grow and grow as our mobile experiences develop over time. So from the sofa to the commute into work, to actually being at work, to doing other things, nothing gets you closer to your audience than mobile. Who takes their phone to the loo with them? You don't have to put your hand up, but Bless you, sir, and you, all the men. I'll say fine, just the women. We'll assume that lots of the women do as well. I heard one guy describe this kind of phenomenon recently as, he said, first thing in the morning, I would reach for my phone, myself, and my wife, in that order. And I think we all are sort of, I know, it's the middle one that worries me, but what's his wife's thing? Let's not go into that. But certainly, for me, and I don't know if I have a problem with this or not, but fact is, it's the last thing I check at night. It's the first thing I go to in the morning. You sort of use the summary screen, and I'm kind of bleary-eyed. This thing's obviously, it's woken me up first. So the first thing you have to do is you have to touch it. The first thing in the morning, this is what you touch. I don't have an alarm clock on my bed. I just have the phone. And you just look at the summary screen on the iPhone, and you go, okay, yeah, what emails have I got? Who's liked what on Facebook? What's going on? And some of my meetings there as well in an app called Sunrise. And that's it. I've just done it in kind of 20-second bleary-eyed, and I slope off to the bathroom to do what I do there. My phone's with me. I mean, that's just the reality now of how we operate. They're constantly, these devices, with us in our real-life interactions, including purchase decisions. And one of the things when I left Pepsi, the Pepsi brand, and I moved to another brand called Gatorade, as I mentioned earlier, and I spent most of my career at PepsiCo working on Gatorade. And we already had a mantra in the brand saying, you sell the science, you sell the product. If they believe in the science, if a triathlete believes in the science, you can double the price tomorrow and still sell him the same product. But the reality was, the sales that we were driving were primarily in the offline world. Some of the best assets to sell the science were in the online world. And this isn't going to be new news to you, but the best way that I could see of blurring the line between online and offline was a mobile device which communicated some elements of the science that we knew drove sales. Again, this isn't new news, but it really came home to me. I imagine I'm kind of going about 6-7 years ago back in my personal experience. And this value, the strategic value of mobile that was growing in my head has really come to a final development now when you understand how desktop-based platforms such as Google and Facebook, when you ask them what value do they place on mobile and getting into mobile, to be fair, much tardier than some of their competitors. Well, the value that they put on mobile is $1 billion. That's exactly the reported sum that Facebook paid for Instagram with its 100 million mobile users, that Google paid for Waze. How many people know about Waze? Cool, few of you. 50 million mobile users. All earlier this year. Waze, very briefly, is essentially a crowdsourced and real-time route mapping map. So think about Google Maps, but think about it being curated by the users. So if there's a speed camera there, you'll mark it on the map, and if it's not there the next time, you'll take it off. Don't forget about updating your TomTom every 6 months. This one does it in real time, tells you where the traffic is and so on. I advise you to try it if you drive. I tried it a couple of weeks ago for the first time. It's brilliant. Brings me to an interesting point about maps, actually. Maps, for me, are the killer app in mobile, right? They're the most obvious example, I think this is why they're the killer app, the most obvious example of linking the offline world with the online world. We all know what happened with Apple when they kind of forced you not to use Google Maps, which was the best map solution out there. You see, the Indian Ocean was apparently in Greenland, the North Pacific Ocean was in Africa, and the Arctic Ocean was just off the coast of India. Now, consumers were saying, we want Google Maps back. And actually, the big red flag for Apple was when people started moving from the iPhone to the Android simply because of Google Maps. And I honestly thought about it. But I would suggest to you that no one wanted Google Maps. They just wanted to know where to go. Now, imagine if you're coming out from a tube station, you know what road the pub is on, it's near the tube, but you've never been there and your friends are all waiting for you. Instead of getting your phone out and waiting for a 3G signal, actually, what could be better than a permanent static sign that just said very simply, you're here. Take a look at that, a couple of seconds, you know where you're going and you're on your way. It's all a means to an end. No one wants Facebook, they just want to know what their friends are up to. No one wants a drill bit. They just want the whole. No one wants a mobile device. They want to know, they want to have access to their mobile data on the go. And when you start thinking about all of those examples I've just said, they just happen to be the best solutions we have at the moment. But imagine a world in the future where online is going to be available seamlessly offline, and actually so seamlessly that the devices that traditionally we understand to be the gatekeeper to the online world, whether it's a laptop, a tablet, or a phone, become, to all intents and purposes, invisible. It's something that I'm going to call the frictionless future, and actually lots of other people have talked about that frictionless as an idea and seamless integration is something that is being talked about more and more. What does frictionless future require? Two things, one of two things. You either remove a layer of technology, this is the PDA example, God, I don't want to carry two, get rid of the PDA, I've got something called a smartphone now. Counterintuitively, you can also get more frictionless if you add a layer of technology. Here's an example of something that does just that. It's a Pebble. Does anyone know about Pebble? Or even pre-ordered one. They're on pre-order. Pre-orders are shipping as we speak now. Anyone pre-ordered them? No? Okay. I guarantee one of you at the back, yeah? Brilliant. Okay. Have you got yours yet? No.
I've got mine through Kickstarter, so...
Got you, because you were one of the original funders. And you're using it?
Yeah, I've got it today, but it's
Brilliant.
Yeah.
I would love to have a chat to you. Perfect. Well, what Pebble does is it adds a layer of technology to your current setup. It adds and pairs itself to your mobile phone. And what it does is it solves that perennial problem of having to take your phone out your bag to check your text messages, or check your diary, or just reply back to someone. Your phone's in your bag or in your back pocket. All it does is it provides a smartwatch kind of surface that just Bluetooths with your phone and shows you all the kind of things of the day that you might want to check without having to do the laborious task of lifting your phone out of your pocket or out of your bag. But it does build on the idea that the mobile phone screen is actually a barrier to streamlined behaviour. All this does is get in the way of human interaction. You'll know what I mean when I show you this, right? How many people, you've definitely been to a gig recently, let's say in the last 2 years, where you've seen, it might even be one of them yourself, that you're seeing a brilliant gig from a band you absolutely love, and you've loved them since you were a child, and your heroes are on stage, and instead of using the best camera system that you have been given by whoever you choose to believe gave it to you, you do this. You watch it through a two-inch screen. And we do that. I've actually seen, there are pictures on the internet of people looking at glorious sunsets in Hawaii doing this. Kind of didn't happen unless I've kind of shared it on Facebook. It's really interesting, actually. Lots of bands have started to ban phones for this very kind of reason. They say it inhibits the emotional connection that the guys on the stage have with their fans and enjoying the music. You can imagine, it's no fun if everyone's just looking at you through a screen. In fact, you're not looking at any eyes or any smiles. And this kind of, the barrier that mobile screens present was talked specifically when Contagious magazine spoke to Ed Sanders at Project Glass, is a CMO over there. And he described glass as the total juxtaposition to mobile phones by saying it's not an interruptive, distracting device that blocks vision. And we all know this kind of phenomenon. These guys, group of friends, all out together, and guess what they're doing? They're not talking to each other, but they are conversing through their digital screens. But when you think beyond screens, think about mobile interaction without the need for any kind of device. It allows for a different type of communication. You get something that could be more human and more natural, therefore more emotionally resonant. It would encourage people to interact with the real world rather than, I think, play on the perception now that sometimes these mobile phone thingies stop us being more community-based and more human with each other. And interestingly enough, as a brand, what would you rather be? The interrupter of a real-life experience or an enhancer of a real-life experience? We'll touch on that in a second. Let's quickly look at the evolution of device and interface, and I'm going to talk about what this last third is in a minute. So we're very well aware of top bit's device and the bottom bit's interface. So holdable devices with physical interfaces. We all remember those. In fact, lots of us are there using our fingers still and things with touchscreens. Now we're moving into the era of wearable devices. You've got Pebble there and Google Glass, obviously, and with more intuitive interfaces. So those voice and gesture. Those of you with new Samsung phones will be aware of the kind of head tilt thing. I don't know how many of you actually use it, but it does it, so you can scroll with your head. And voice, actually Google tell us that 25% of all searches on Android currently today are conducted through the voice. And that's set to grow and grow as things like the app, the Siri and other voice recognition technology just gets better and better. By the way, as if to make my point about Pebble, about this, there's an evolution of Pebble which is now called Kraos. So I don't know, you may want to have saved your money at the back there, but apparently these guys are saying this is Pebble 2.0. It allows you to do the one thing you can't do with Pebble, which is interact with your voice. Actually take a call, your phone's in your bag still, but take a call, kind of like Knight Rider, I guess, and talk to the guy that's ringing. So you're running along, whatever you're doing, it's taking another layer of technology away to allow you to get closer to the human interaction. So what's next? What's in the final third? I'm going to propose that the devices will start to be integral and the interfaces used to control those devices are going to be innate. And this is where the device becomes you. So instead of a Google Glass, think about where it might evolve into a Google contact lens and eventually a Google Retina and something else, which is probably a bit too scary, even for me. But this is really interesting. We might think that this is all very, very future tech. But even in 2009, I've got a quote here from a guy called Babak Parviz, and he was the founder of Google Glass over at Google, and he's still involved with the project heavily. He wrote in 2009 at great length about how the basic technologies needed to build functional contact lenses are in place. Google are thinking about this. I'm not revealing any kind of but Google Glasses, the next stage is how you integrate the interface into the most ubiquitous of mobile devices, and that's you. And, hey, look. Oh, there he is. That is Babak Parviz. And look, 4 years after he said that, this happened. This is early 2013. This is Ghent University over in Belgium. What you're looking at is, when they announced, it's a contact lens. And on that contact lens is a spherical LCD. And they've kind of rather amusingly put the LEDs in a dollar sign. But it's very, very basic. It does go to show you that the development in this technology, eventually when you do get an LCD screen that can be completely high fidelity and resolution, very easily you can start seeing some of the applications for that. But the interesting thing is when you put something like that together with something like this. This is innate brain control, which is part of the interface part of the discussion that I was having. This is a lady called Jan Schulman. She's a quadriplegic. And in 2012, she was put together with a device, which you can see, which goes directly into her brain and directly connected to, through the power of her brain, to a robot arm. And for the first time in many years, she was able to feed herself a bar of chocolate. And I love that quote over there, one small nibble for a woman, one giant bite for BCI, that's brain control interfaces. And you can imagine how this has started to transform her life. And lots of you will recognise other examples of this from guys with amputated arms coming back from Afghanistan, being able to control their arms with the power of thought, and you might have seen some stuff of that in the news as well. So if we take integrated devices with innate interfaces, where your body becomes the device, plus you add it to what we saw earlier, the pervasive idea of computing, where the power of the network is all around you, able to interact with you at given notice anywhere you are in the world. We get something that Craig Mundy, who's a really smart guy at Microsoft, actually. He's a former chief research and strategy officer at Microsoft, and he's one of special advisor to President Obama on strategy and tech. He said this. He said, "You won't necessarily sit down at a computing terminal. Computing will be all around you, and you'll basically converse with that pervasive intelligence." There is a reason I put the image from 2001 on that slide. That's HAL from 2001. Because frankly, this is a little bit scary. Pervasive intelligence sounds a lot like Big Brother, but that is a subject probably of a whole other presentation. But we can also see some of the pitfalls, especially around privacy, that Dave mentioned this morning, around this type of pervasive computing. Imagine one of the pitfalls like this. Andy Goodman from Fjord described a particularly bad example. So you're with a love of your life, and you're walking down a beautiful sunset beach, and maybe you're about to propose or do something equally as romantic, when suddenly, through your Google contact lens, this happens. A huge promotional message for candy. And I like candy and I like peanut M&Ms, but that was an inappropriate time to remind me that there's a new type of M&Ms out. Tell me in the morning when I need a snack, fine, but not when I'm about to propose to my girlfriend. The nightmare is visual spam, hundreds of brand messages that take no account of the timing and the placement of those messages. We need to move from an era of thinking about visual spam to contextual branding. Instead of bombarding people with brand messages on screens, we're going to need to become part of their consumer journeys. We're going to need to understand innately and intuitively what those journeys are. Highly contextual, relevant, personalised information. This isn't news to you guys. This is already what we're having to get our head around. For one simple reason is that people already expect it today. When Google was researching Project Glass, they asked millennials, tell us, what percentage of your life do you spend online versus offline? And lots of the respondents came back and said, simply don't understand the question. Online is now a seamless augmenter of every aspect of my life, and I couldn't honestly tell you when I'm offline versus when I'm online. They already expect seamless, intuitive interfaces. Their real-world experiences in retail, events, and out of home, supported by mobile, is set to become, in my opinion, the battleground for share of mind. I love Illy's Lufthansa example. So what it showed is the power of mobile as a way of driving brand affinity, something traditionally that you wouldn't give in, my early line-by-line schedule. You wouldn't give that kind of value to some of the things that were lower down in the tactical list. It really sort of shows the point that you can spend all the money you want on TV advertising, and millions and billions do get spent, but hearts and minds are won on the shop floor, or in the airport, or in the pub. And increasingly, every type of business now has a brand experience that is augmented by some element of mobile. In fact, needs to. People just expect it in ways they just didn't expect it before, as you know. I mean, one example is, I tried the EasyJet example about 2 months ago, actually coming back from Cannes, because I had to change my flights. And it was brilliant. Illy's totally right. Never used it before, and my opinion of EasyJet is fine. It's just one of the commodity airlines you have to use. The app is fantastic and has made me want, I consider them as my first option going in the future, especially if I need to change my flight at last minute, which I need to do in Cannes, but that's another story. The watch out, here's the watch out. Because the way that you develop the assets in this world of augmented experiences is very different to how traditional agencies have worked traditionally. In fact, agencies of all types and clients have worked historically. If we don't get up to speed, we're just going to be left behind by consumers who are able to often do their own thing at a much faster rate than we can. But the flip side to that is those of us who are able to get their head around this are going to have a clear and significant competitive advantage that can be translated to increased investment in the boardroom in big major clients. Finance directors will see the value of this. And before I go, you remember these guys? Well, this is just a reminder, and I think all of you will have noticed already, the Borg's future, their vision of the future, is our reality with Project Glass. And that guy there is called Thad Starner, and that guy there is him today. He's a technical lead at Project Glass at Google. Now, look, interestingly enough, by the way, when they took that picture, the company that's putting all their money into that wasn't even invented. Google started in 98, that picture's from about 96. That's amazing kind of transformational advances in tech that we're seeing, driven by kind of the exponential power of computing that we're experiencing. I think the jury is still way, way out on whether Glass is going to be successful or not. I think the number one barrier to Glass being successful might just be the privacy issue that Dave talked about at the beginning. I still think we haven't worked out, and Google hasn't even worked out. We've been very open about the fact that they haven't worked it out, which is why they're kind of trying to get experiences from lots of people around the world and how they might use Google. No one's worked out the implications of privacy of Google Glass, but either way, what the slide does show is that some things might not appear to be as crazy as they first seem. And certainly with Moore's law, making computing power double every kind of 18 months and halving cost at the same time, mean that the technological advancements we're going to see in the next kind of 30 or 40 years are going to, as I said in the beginning, transform our society in ways we can't even imagine. They're going to solve problems for which right now we don't have questions. And that's an amazing time to be in this business. I think probably more interesting than when TV first came about for, marketers. And that's it. Thanks.